As is usually the case, the latest batch of Wings episodes is an absolute delight, and it includes the Christmas episode for this season, which always makes me happy. Today I'm talking about Wings, Season 5, Episodes 9, 10, 11 and 12. As always, I will go through the basic narratives, share some thoughts, any positives, any negatives, but there aren't really any negatives with these ones, and that means that there will be spoilers from now. So we have Season 5, Episode 9, Too Good to Be Gotten. This is directed by Leonard R. Garner Jr., and we have two parts to the narrative. One focuses on Antonio. He's selling things to get money to send back to Italy, and Lowell literally buys the shirt off of his back, it was kind of an uncomfortable moment. It's not that there was no comedy there, but it definitely was a little uncomfortable. And Roy ends up giving Antonio $100 to spend the day with Roy's mother. Kills two birds with one stone. Antonio gets money. Roy doesn't have to spend time with his mother. The main narrative focuses on a woman called Sandy, played by Valerie Mahaffey, and she was, once upon a time, at school, obsessed with Joe. She called him Joey Bear, and she happens to be in Nantucket, and Joe's really concerned about this, but everybody else is really happy to meet up with her. It seems to go really well, and then Joe goes into his office, and there is a teddy bear, a Joey Bear, if you will, hanging from the ceiling, which is certainly a little bit disturbing. And Joe eventually confronts her, and she had reasons for everything. No, I didn't follow you home from school. Yes, I did cut a lock of your hair, but it was for a dare, and I believed her. It was very, very convincing. Now, I'd seen this episode before, and I could remember what happened, but even then, I found her explanations to be genuinely convincing, and so did Joe. He agrees to go out to dinner with her, and at the end, he goes back to her apartment, and in the basement is prom. She decorated it out to be like their school prom, the way it was, because she wanted Joe to take her to prom, and Joe instantly, as you would imagine, starts panicking, and he tries to leave, tries to get out, and yes, Sandy seemed unhinged, but then she started to refer to Mr. Phone and Mr. Door, and that's the point when I think she kind of lost it. And it was a nice touch. It made it just a little bit eerier, a little bit creepier, and I thought it was a fun part of the narrative. I don't want to be in Joe's shoes. I think there was a lot of whiplash with believing everything was perfectly fine and that Joe was mistaken, and then being thrown towards the truth, and it was very effective and very, very well done, and I really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. As I said, I could remember it quite well from the first time I watched it, and I think it's an episode I'll probably always remember. Sandy was a very well-written character, and I think the performance there was great. We then come to Season 5, Episode 10, Come Fly With Me, also directed by Leonard R. Garner Jr., and Brian, Joe, Helen, and Lowell go to Boston. And I don't have too many thoughts on this episode. It was absolutely fine. I didn't dislike it. I don't have a lot to say. They go there to have a good time, and they go to this party, but they didn't realise, and I couldn't remember this, and I didn't see it coming, they didn't realise that all of the women there were call girls, which for Brian, Joe, and Lowell might be a little bit awkward, but they can get out of the situation. But obviously the men there all think that Helen is a call girl, and it gets a little bit awkward. I did get a little bit worried that Brian was too into one of the women before he found out, bearing in mind he's in a relationship with Alex. So I didn't love that for Brian. I'm not saying it's atypical of his personality. I think it is quite in keeping with Brian, but I didn't like that for the character. I didn't want him to be quite heavily flirting with this woman when he's with Alex. So didn't love that, but it's not that I don't believe it would happen. And back at the airport, Roy, Faye, and Antonio are trying to win this radio contest. I liked how that played out. It was good fun. It was nice padding for the main narrative. It got quite a bit of screen time, actually. And again, don't have a lot to say about that either, but I enjoyed it. I thought Come Fly With Me was a pleasant episode, and one that I certainly enjoyed. And then we come to Season 5, Episode 11, Happy Holidays. This is, of course, the Christmas episode, and it's directed by Andy Ackerman. The airport is all decorated for Christmas. Visually, it looks absolutely beautiful. And we have various aspects to the narrative here. Brian has to go and meet Alex's family for Christmas because they had a change of plans. He doesn't want to do this. It's very clear that this is one of the first times he's been in a serious, committed relationship. He's not used to meeting the parents. I guess, though, even though if you get used to doing it, it's probably always going to be quite nerve-wracking. And he ends up wearing these adorable pajamas. He wanted to make sure his I guess, good pajamas that covered him up still fit him. And it was adorable. I thought that was a really, really nice touch. We then have Faye preparing for this party for the children, and she's quite controlling, demanding that Helen does everything. And Joe was supposed to help with the Christmas tree, but it was too old. It wasn't working. So he presents her Roy's Christmas tree in a briefcase, which I rather enjoyed. I thought that was really good fun. Faye did not like it. And then the kids arrive, and it turns out they were the teenagers. Helen had called the teen centre rather than the children's centre. And Faye was constantly criticising everything Helen did, even though Helen said she did everything the way Faye asked. And I feel like they could have done a little bit more there with placing the blame on Faye, revealing that Faye hadn't given her the right information, or she hadn't given her clear instructions. I think they could have done a little bit more with that to show that, well, to humble Faye a little bit, because she was getting quite bossy and controlling. So I think they could have done a little bit more with that, but it was okay. I still enjoyed it. We also have Antonio sleeping with Bunny, Lowell's ex-wife Bunny, because they're both very lonely. She's in Antonio's cab, they're both lonely, it's Christmas, they sleep together, and Joe and Brian's reactions were great. Especially with Brian in his little pajamas on. It was adorable. I really liked it. And of course, Antonio has the conundrum of, will I tell Lowell? Should I tell Lowell? And he realises that he has to, otherwise it's going to eat away at him. And he does, but he tells him when Lowell is dressed as Santa. I thought he did a great job with the character, and Lowell as Santa works really well. And Antonio is dressed as an elf. So needless to say, it's a pretty funny scene, and Santa starts fighting the elf, and it's all chaotic, and Faye's getting stressed, and there's a lot of shouting, and this is the very end of the episode, and then the carolers walk in, and they start singing, but everybody's arguing, and it's Christmas. It is Christmas, it is chaotic, and it's an absolute joy. It's a really fun episode. I usually always enjoy the festive episodes of sitcoms, and thankfully, Happy Holidays is no different. As I said, I think they could have done a little bit more with Faye, and Faye finding out that maybe she hadn't given the right instructions, but other than that, I thought it was pretty effective. And then we come to the last episode of this batch, Season 5, Episode 12, Ready, Teddy, Go. This is directed by Andy Ackerman. This one's really good fun. I couldn't remember what happened in this one. It has been about 5 years since I last watched the show, and I like that because there's a mystery in this. I was really drawn into it. We have a subplot, very briefly. Faye stole a lab rat because she's doing psychology classes. And, well, that's not why she stole the lab rat. That's how she had access to the lab rat. And her professor comes looking for it and demands it back. And she says no. And it turns out it was an experiment. She was the only student who took the rat once she found out the rat was going to be harmed. And she stood her ground and kept that rat safe, and she passed the test, which seems quite manipulative, but I understand what they were doing. It turns out Roy was looking after the rat, and he claimed to have let the rat go, but he didn't. It was good fun. I think it was certainly quite thought-provoking. The main narrative focuses on the fact that David, Helen's boyfriend, has come back from Paris, and he's bought Helen a gift. He's brought her back a gift. And everybody they go out to dinner with David, and Joe doesn't want to go. David understands why Joe maybe isn't being the most friendly towards him. He says, I didn't invest in your business, I'm dating your old girlfriend. Yeah, if I were Joe, he wouldn't be my favourite person, put it that way. But David's being nice to Joe, and he's trying, which is something credit to David. David genuinely, apart from the first episode, he has come across as quite a nice person. And they end up all going back to the hotel room. David's in the shower briefly, and they look through his suitcase because it's open, and they find a teddy, as in a lingerie garment. And Helen thinks it's too soon to receive a gift like this. Bearing in mind, yes, they've been dating for some time, but David's been away a lot. They've hardly actually seen each other. And it's too soon, but who else could it be for if not Helen? Either it's for Helen, but he's really jumping the gun, or it's for somebody else, and they're not being exclusive. So either way, it's a really awkward situation, and we get the mystery for quite some time, and he's about to give her the gift. This is sometime later on, they're on their own, and he gives her some little soaps in the shape of musical instruments. That's beautiful. That's adorable. So who is the teddy for if not for Helen? Well, towards the end of the episode, Helen reveals that she knows about the teddy, and it turns out it was for Helen, but it was too soon. He'd bought it for her and then realised, maybe it's a little too early in the relationship. I'll get her some soap instead. And I thought that was quite a... On the one hand, it does feel kind of anticlimactic. There's no big shocking reveal or anything, but at the same time, it further paints David in a nice light. So it was interesting. I liked the mystery. I thought it worked really well, and absolutely no negatives with this episode at all. If I were to rank them, I suppose I'd go Ready Teddy Go because of the mystery. It was very well written. And then Happy Holidays. And then Good to Be Forgotten. And then Come Fly With Me. But they're all great. Really solid batch of Wings episodes. Really looking forward to watching the next batch of Season 5.